the school.
Yeah.
Could never remember your name and always referred to you as Susie.
We are live, not really recorded.
There were thousands, you know. There were thousands of kids when you think about it, you know? 20 years times maybe about 100, a couple of thousand.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the February 5th meeting. Finally, the snow has stopped, so we can meet. Thank you, everybody, for not yelling at me over yesterday's meeting and dealing with the snow. Tonight, we have the budgets for the assessor, the accountant, and the treasurer collector. Assessor, we'll start with you. Come on up, Jack.
Hello, Jack Pistorino.
Does anybody know what page that starts on?
9.
9, thank you.
Basically, it's the same as last year, except for there was an adjustment from I have 2 clerks in my office, a full-time and a part-time, and myself. They did get a salary adjustment last year, so that is reflected on this budget as well, but that's the only changes from last year. We have $134,233. We also have, they receive sick time incentives. They're in a union, I'm not, they do get that. And they also get stipends for health insurance if they don't take that. One of my clerks receives that. Education and training is the same as last year. Other professional and technical is basically my valuation system. We use Vision to do our valuation. They also participate in the recertification. Every 3 years, we have to go out and get recertified by the Department of Revenue. FY16 is a recertification year, so we have an awful lot of work to do. In between the recertification years, we have an intra-year adjustments. They also participate in that, and they also participate in I go out and inspect properties that have building permits to ensure that the value is correct. So if they put on an addition, we pick up the new value. Or if they do a demo, we move the value. So we adjust accordingly. So the other professional technical, under that, I have Vision, that this is my company, does $28,000 for that. We also have $11,000 for personal property. I have a company, RRC, that does our personal property. We also have to have tax maps, and we also go to the registry of deeds, and that costs us $400. And that comes out to $42,824. Hasn't changed. We have a contract with them, so it shouldn't change. Through FY17. Postage, we have same as last year, $1,700. We mail out exemptions for elderly, for veterans, people that applied before. We have about 265 applicants on average. Which is a good number, high number, higher than most towns. So what we do is we mail out their applications. A lot of them forget, so we mail it out to them, help them fill it out as well. So that's part of the mailing. We also do mailings for forms of list and income and expenses for commercial properties. Every year they have to supply us information on those forms, so that's part of the mailing. Office supplies have been $1,800. Town vehicle for gas and for supplies as well has been the same. Other supplies, tools of my trade, tape measures, roller measures, cameras, come out of that budget for $600. Travel budget's the same. That also encumbers, I have a clerk that uses his own vehicle. He gets mileage as well. Dues and fees, memberships to associations. I have a 3-person board. They're part of the dues as well. And that's my budget. It's the same as last year. I don't know if you have any questions or not.
Why is it showing, somebody can probably explain this to me, variances between the town manager stage on that last column?
Where are you looking? I might have a copy of it.
Yeah, so the 1.57, if it's flat.
Well, last year, the town clerks, they got an adjustment. And it doesn't show it on the FY15, but it is showing it on FY16. Because when I had the budget last year, they did not get the increase, and then during the year, it was negotiated through a contract with the town manager.
Well, not just specific to that line, all the way down. So the numbers are the same all the way across.
Oh, I don't know. You know,
Just adjusted 15, I think, to town manager. So adjusted 133,734 for salary, but it's now 134,233 with that little bump in increase, so it's 1.9%.
Okay, I was looking at the, I was looking at the 16. Okay, thank you.
Question?
certainly.
This may come up in other budgets as well, but just when you're talking about sick leave incentive and health insurance incentive, could you explain those two items? Because I'm sure it's going to come up in other contracts. Is that a union negotiated contract?
Yes, it is. It's in the clerical union contract. I don't know if it's any other union contracts, but the people that work for me are in the union, the clerks union, and they do get sick leave incentives. So if they're not sick, and my people usually aren't sick, they're very good. They get an incentive of days pay. They also, I believe, in the contract get an extra personal day, I believe it is.
Mm-hmm.
And the insurance stipend is if you do not take the insurance, the town insurance, you will get $750. Now, that's not myself, that's just the clerk's union. I don't know what about the other unions, but that's what it specifies in the
So that's in lieu of a town coverage?
correct.
Questions, anybody? Questions about the assessments for this year? You're here.
Well, the assessments went up.
I want to give you more than 5
The
minutes.
the assessments went up this year because of sales from calendar year 2013. We saw an average increase of about 5%. The tax rate went down from $17.19 to $17 because of that. Just the way it works out, that's how it does work. Values go up, tax rate usually goes down. It depends on the debt and so forth, but for the most part, that's how that works. But this year in 16, we'll be using 2014 sales, and again, I started some of my analysis for that, and it looks like values going up again, which is good.
Yeah. Seems like nobody has anything else. Thank you.
You're welcome, Jack.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hoping it wouldn't be last again this year.
You and Sue can fight that out if you want to be.
Good evening, I'm Leo Provost, Treasurer's Club.
I guess
we'll start with the treasurer's budget. It's
Sure.
very similar to last year. Much like the assessors, I had 3 clerks in my office, so in FY15 there was a renegotiated contract. Those increased numbers are reflected in FY16's budget here. Those are the only salary increases or changes. The one big increase that I put in for here is in postage. Last year, it was, the number that I originally submitted was cut back, and I'm predicting that we're going to run over the amount by $2,000 or $3,000. So I'm again bumping that up to $21,500. That's postage that's used to mail all tax bills, excise tax bills, vendor checks, and other miscellaneous correspondence that leaves my office. Aside from that, there's some very minor increases in office supplies expense, and I think tax bills too, a couple $100. But that's about it. Does anybody have any questions?
Pretty straightforward.
Okay. Well, that's the treasurer's budget. Shall we get into the other good stuff?
Good stuff, all right.
The other good stuff starts with basically tax title. And the number I submitted was $35,000. It's been knocked down to $25,000. That's fine. We can certainly live within that number. Next, we come to the debt and interest. That's the big one, and this is probably going to consume the longest discussion of any of the topics. When this budget was submitted, it was back in November, so we had some, it was preliminary, and we knew that it would be adjusted further because we've got a lot of big borrowing items on the docket for FY16 and FY17. Those include the new high school, middle school construction. There's some pieces of that, as well as a new ladder truck, as well as a couple of projects that were landfill and memorial archway. Those numbers were all preliminary back in November. In fact, there wasn't anything put in for the ladder truck or for the new high school. Hadn't even been approved at that point. But we knew that if it was, it's going to affect the FY16 numbers. So, these numbers, basically, they're going to go by the wayside. I'm going to give you a sheet that details everything that I'm aware of at this point, but it's still going to have estimates because we don't have we don't have final numbers, and we won't until we get further into April and even start of
I need 2 extra. Just need 2.
Did you pass out the one that says Leo's copy? Oh, yeah, I did. No? Oh, you did.
No, I don't.
Okay. Okay. This is a complete picture for FY16 of what we expect to pay in principal and interest on both our long-term bonds and our bands that we're doing. Now, there's some numbers that are estimates, and I've tried to highlight all of those areas in green. But the most important ones are down towards the bottom in green, the last two, the ladder truck and the new high school, middle school. Basically, we have a fire truck to pay for on or around April 1st for $1.2 million. I've also gotten a cash flow from the school building committee that identifies the fact that we'll probably spend roughly $6 million by the end of June 30th on the process of the architects detailing plans in a very specific manner so that they can be sent out on the street for bid. And it's actually very costly.
$6 million for the drawings?
Yep. There's other things involved in that, I mean, but the bulk of it right now, we've already paid out $500,000.
Should have paid better attention in school.
So therefore, in the month of March, my plan is to go out and borrow $7.2 million in a short-term fashion. It's called a band, it's a bond anticipation note. And probably do that for a 6-month period. Because I think that we should borrow the bulk of the money that we're going to need for the new school in as early as we can in FY16, so I figure around August. The band would mature, we'd pay that off, and all we'd pay on that is interest. And I've got estimated interest figures there, which were not on the very preliminary ones that we did back in November. So roughly, we'd wind up paying $4,200 of interest on the fire truck and about $21,000 worth of interest on the new school. And that's at a 70 basis point, so that's 0.7%, which is a rough number of what I think we could borrow that short-term money at. So that's going to hit the budget this year. The $2,100 is a debt exclusion. The $4,200 at this point is a levy item, but there's still review and decisions to be made by the Board of Selectmen about what they want to do as far as covering the 1.2 million on the ladder truck, and they haven't made a decision as of yet. So I've put it in here based on the way things stand today, which is that we have the ability to borrow for a truck, and it's going to hit the levy. So, and then the other two that are green is the landfill and the memorial arch. Those are still under review because I don't have good numbers yet on how much we're going to need to borrow this year for the landfill. Not a lot of money's been spent. I've got to, I'm going to wait as long as I can to get the best information possible as to how much they think they're going to spend in FY16 so we can cover that. However, around about August, we go and we borrow $36 million. So now you go up to the top of the page. Up towards the top, you'll see new middle high school construction estimate. 36 million that we borrow. If we borrow in August, we're going to have an interest payment, a 6-month interest payment in FY16. I calculated a rough number, 4.25%. That interest payment would be $765,000, and that would be a debt exclusion as well. The way the fire truck stands right now, if we do borrow, and if we borrow, we want to do both the school and the fire truck all at once. We have some cost savings involved there. Doesn't make sense to do it two separate. If we borrow, then we'll have an interest payment on the fire truck, again calculated at 4.25%, $25,500, and that will hit the levy. So that's the big changes based on the early submission of these numbers versus a better estimate now that we're several months into it of where we stand with debt interest and short-term interest for FY16. But again, these numbers aren't firm yet either. We'll have better information in April. We'll have better information in March when we do a ban for those big items as to what that rate was. We'll have better information in April when the other bans roll over. And then we won't have any better information until August when we actually borrow. So this one is basically still up in the air somewhat, but these numbers down here in yellow are the best numbers available at this point, and they're higher than what the original submission was. I know the sheet's new to some of you. You might want to study it. If you have any questions, give me a call or come see me. I'll walk you through it. Any questions before I go on from this? Like I say, study it and give me a call, come see me. I'll walk you through it personally.
What's our bond rating, just for
It's a double A right now. Yeah, we jumped up to a double A about 6 months ago. So, we're in a good position for that at this point. We will be rated once again at the time of borrow. So we also have to be sure we stay at a double A.
Questions on this portion? Great. Keep moving.
That covers the debt and interest. That brings me to the retirement. Is that, just looking for? Oh,
Yeah, it's just more
the second page
details
is
on that.
just- Yeah, the second page is just a listing of authorized and unissued debt. So I think we're at the Department 9110. I believe it's page 81. My original submission here was $2,340,302. Not sure how that got knocked down, but it's a number that's not negotiable. It's provided to us by the Plymouth County Retirement System, and so that's going to need to be bumped back up to the original submission.
Maybe Rick's not letting someone retire.
No, it doesn't even have to do with that. I don't know how maybe it was a mistype or an oversight or something, but it's not really a number that can be adjusted. It's a fixed number. Unemployment, excuse me?
It's different than what?
My number
Requested.
submitted, and then the town
Than what we
manager's-
received before?
No.
No,
My number that was
the
submitted was
Requested
changed
versus
in the town manager submission
number.
column here. You see
Okay.
it?
So the number that needs to be there is 2,340,302.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Next category is unemployment. It's 9130, and that's 100,000, same as it was last year. That's a number that you can't firmly predict. You might say, well, gee, we haven't had layoffs. Well, believe it or not, there's still unemployment. Last year, of the 100,000, we've already spent 70. Some of it's just, some of it results in a change in, sometimes the school system has teachers of this type category, but now they need some of the different type, and so they don't renew certain people's contracts. Other unemployment type situations have been seasonal help that the town has had to use, and then when they lay them off, they're entitled to collect unemployment if they've been here long enough. So it seems strange to me even to this date, but we always do have people filing for unemployment.
Well, even if they leave and get laid off at the next place.
Well, yes, that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're still on the hook.
Yeah, which is crazy. The health insurance number, if we're moving on to category 9140, the health insurance number that I submitted was a little higher than the town manager's submission. At this point, we do not have any information from Mayflower Health Group on what next year's rates are going to look like. They're supposed to have scheduled a couple meetings, but as I understand it, they were both canceled in, I think, 2 weeks in a row due to snowstorms and things. So called down there today, they don't have any information for us. The way that I calculated my numbers were estimating a 5% increase in the health insurance premiums, and then I think I had a 4% buffer over and above that. And for those of you that weren't here last year or in past years, what the buffer's used for is if people retire in town, they're still collecting, they're still receiving health insurance, but new employee gets hired, and those new employees may sign up for health insurance from the town. So that's an increase over who's currently on the rolls and rosters. Another situation is if someone is single and they get married during the year, and they put their spouse on a family plan, now that's a big increase to the cost. So we have things like that. At this point, I guess I'm okay with this number until we find out what the real health insurance increases are, which we should find out before the budget is finalized. If that comes in at 5%, then with this new number submitted, we're carrying a buffer of, I think, 2.25%. I think only $100,000. The fact is, we can chew through that pretty quickly with just the two subject matters that I've mentioned. So, nobody knows what the real right number is. I will say and admit that in most years, we've come back with unspent money of $100,000, sometimes higher. So it's kind of hit or miss. But right now, that's where it stands, and we'll just wait further information on final premium rates.
So does that include the health insurance for the retirees?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, that's everybody. Active employees, retired employees. If you're ready for the next category, that'd be 9150, life insurance, $14,000. This number doesn't change much from year to year. If you're looking for $1,000, we can take it out of here. I would have no problem with that, because usually we're running a couple $1,000 excess by the end of the year. And like I said, that number just doesn't seem to change very much. So we could knock that down, at least 1,000. I'd be okay with that. Last but not least is Medicare. This has always been a difficult number to predict. Seems like every year I have increased the number, and every year we have overspent the category. Medicare is charged on every dollar that is paid out to an employee, whether it's regular time, overtime, or whatever. So these snowstorms bother me because we're paying a lot more in overtime, and therefore Medicare numbers going up. Also, if any groups receive a new contract, salary negotiations, it's going to affect this number. It's going to go up. So I once again predict that we're going to probably overspend the 280 that we had for last year. And I've submitted a number of 293. I think that's far more realistic for next year, but at the end of next year, we might very well exceed that as well. And that's when usually money gets moved around, because nobody can predict every line item for the entire town to the dollar, and so some are overspent a little bit, some have excess, and the last couple of months of the year, it's permissible to make those modifications and adjustments.
Probably not even for you, Leo, but just because you brought it up. Where are we at with contract negotiations? Do we have a lot of unions that
Can wait for Rick on that.
coming up for?
We are, I think, we will have nothing in place for FY16. FY15, there are contracts that we have, and there are some negotiations now.
What about the schools? Are they back in line in the same?
I know they're just starting with the teachers association. Just started the last several months, I should say, just started, but they don't have anything in place for teachers for FY16, which is obviously the biggest group.
Thank you.
Questions?
All set?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leo.
On up.
Oh, well, see. I spoke too soon.
Mr. Heavy Boot, Leo?
Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
Good.
So if you can come full page.
This is on page 7 and 8.
Thank you.
There's an index here in the front. Easy for you, bottom lining it. The budget has increased by $11,000. Portion of it has to do with contractual obligations. The health insurance incentive that wasn't in there last year. And we are also required to have a GASB OPEB actuarial done every 3 years, and this year's the year.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, what's
We get
that?
a lot of new people.
So the OPEB, that huge dollar amount that we're responsible for, they actually come in and they assess what we owe, basically. Or
OPEB
is other post-employment benefits. So it's anything that anybody gets after they retire. And the whole state is basically in deficit, looking to catch up on this OPEB. But they have to do an actual actuarial every year based on who's retired, every 3 years, sorry, who's retired and things like that.
And this, most of that's health insurance, that's the biggest number in OPEB, and as you know, as just mentioned in your question, in our budget, basically pay as you go, we're funding the retirees' health insurance in the budget every year, but building an OPEB trust fund to deal with retirees, I know most of us, it's right with linear for 200 years old. So
And they have discussed, is that where there's a extended deadline, or
Yes. And
is that any different than?
have they changed that? Right? You haven't changed
No,
that.
actually, no, they haven't,
Yeah.
we're just trying to recall what it was. No, it's not deep.
So is that sort of like a liability calculation?
Yes. So like Leo was saying, if you have somebody retire and then you have somebody new come on,
Right.
you're carrying both in your
Right.
annual budget. What they want you to do is put the money aside to cover the retirees in the
Mhm.
future.
Right.
And you have a certain date to come up with that, that.
Barbara,
Outline, right?
because of Leo whispering here, confusing full funding of the pension system
Okay.
versus OPEB.
Thank you.
And there is the deadline for full funding of the pension system is 2035.
I think Plymouth County is, the state mandate was 2040, I think. Plymouth County is doing much better than that. We were down to, I think, 2030, 2028. And we had the bad time in the market, which affects it. And so they've added some more years back to that. So they may be around 2033 right now.
Sorry, so I was confusing the two.
Yeah, it's easy to.
I don't mean to be ignorant, but when I retire from the town of Abington, I carry health insurance the rest of my life.
If you choose to.
If you're eligible, if you're in the pension system, the state umbrella pension system, which Plymouth County is in that, under that umbrella, you are eligible to continue your benefit. So again, you still have a local, your own personal contribution, of 30%, but.
It's because you're not on Medicare, Medicaid.
Continue benefit, yes, that's.
Well, Medicare becomes your primary.
It does become your primary?
Yes.
At a
Okay.
certain age, but if you retire before the Medicare kicks in, we take the full vote. Well, our percentage. Any questions?
I'm flying tonight.
Love it.
These have been pretty straightforward. Yeah. We are not going to do the town clerk budget tonight. Leanne is at a training thing, so we will reschedule her.
I was gonna say I didn't see her here.
She's not here. Yeah, if you can just give an update, state of the town.
I thought you wanted me to go to the town.
Yeah, that too.
And which starts on page 7. No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
There's an index in the front.
Yeah, I was on the last one. It starts on page 3.
3 to 4.
keeping in mind, this is just the office budget, and I don't know how much detail, but this doesn't include any increases in the budget for the coming fiscal year. The administrative assistant is basically works for the ZBA and conservation, lesser hours than in the selectmen's office. That's essentially half-time in our office, but staffed full-time essentially.
Is the number here only
It
only reflects the time in your office?
Correct, that's correct. But effectively, we have full-time coverage because that's the workspace for the other responsibilities.
It's one full-time employee, not two part-time.
That is correct. The insurance reimbursement is actually contractual for the town manager, me, and the municipal hearing stipend is every town in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has to have somebody who actually has to deal with appeals. For instance, if Chad gets a ticket,
Never gonna happen.
not a speeding ticket,
All
but
right.
a parking ticket, a civil violation per se. The hearing officer in each municipality is the person who would listen to that and make a decision. And in our case, the assistant town manager is fortunate to have that responsibility.
How many hearings are there?
I actually don't know, Chad. I'll bet you that.
A lot or a little?
There's probably, I'd rather get you, they're not that common.
Okay.
They're really not that common. I bet you there isn't, half a dozen a year might
Okay.
be.
So a little.
Yeah, and the expense budget, going down through each category is again, the same. The auditing and accounting, that's the independent audit that is done by the outside company every year. That's not an internal expense, that's a contractual expense. The rest of essentially office expenses, advertising, postage, et cetera.
Which you're planning to spend less on? Am I in the right line? Postage?
Postage.
Is that bid each
Slight.
year, or is it, if you're looking at the accounting, is it bid out each year, or is it a sort of continuing contract?
It's, well, we changed about was it 2 years ago? I forget, did we used to have Malone, Lynch, Gander?
No, we have that.
We've had Powers and Sullivan for several years, so it's before my tenure, but it's not required to be bid under the procurement laws. I don't know when the last time it has been bid or has been changed. Yeah.
Been here at least 10 years.
Powers and Sullivan has been, yeah,
I
okay.
don't
So,
know, I don't know if the contracts changed.
yeah, okay, so it hasn't been bid per se in that regard. So, I don't know how much detail anybody's seeking on some of these smaller. One of the things to keep in mind here on this other purchase services is, I'm trying to look at if you look at the left-hand column ending in 0500, I'm sorry, 001, 12205399, 0500 out of the purchase services, that $4,100 is is that our?
That looks like it's also mentioned
That's our
later in
service,
the,
right, that's our membership and our.
later in the travel.
I'm sorry.
Is that mentioned in the note in the travel line, 5710, 500? Top of the next page. Top-ish.
Yes, there it is. Very good. Thank you, Matt. And you just got the book tonight. That's pretty amazing. So,
I actually have it at home.
and
Haven't been home yet, though.
Dues and fees are, again, projected to be the same. We don't have any reason to believe that any of these are being increased at this time, so. So it's essentially a level service budget, top to bottom here, and there's no contractual increases in line or scheduled for FY16 at this time. Anybody have any specific questions?
Yes. I'm just curious, the postage is going down, and so is the telephone budget appropriated?
Not going to use the phone anymore.
Yeah, I'm tired of that. Yeah, you know what? that's a Dory question.
Has it maybe been moved to, because I know
Well-
last year that was, some things were moved into different categories
Yeah.
or listed under,
Yeah, as you see, as a bottom line, the expenses are essentially the same. So do you know if that was moved, categorized a little bit differently?
No, it wasn't.
Okay. Let me get you, I will forward through the chairman an answer to that particular question, Barbara.
thank you.
This is probably a little crazy question, travel budget and dues.
Yes.
So we've probably moved again a few things around, but
Uh-huh.
can I just ask, $1,000 for mileage reimbursement on one line and $1,365 for mileage hotels, where do we travel to?
Well, most of
And
these.
how many people travel for that? Isn't it like 50 cents maybe a mile? I mean, are we traveling out of this country for $1,000? Or,
Well, you have, first of all, keep in mind that some of this we don't know. For instance, we don't know how many selectmen may or may not choose to go to the MMA conference.
which is where?
That's in Boston. Or to go to, Plymouth County Selectmen's Association meetings. We don't know that. So it's a little bit of a moving target. Not
Wait a minute.
gonna- mileage.
We're reimbursing mileage to the selectmen or the selectmen's budget?
No, you don't, I'm sorry. Well, it would be anything that's submitted for reimbursement by an individual.
Who are those individuals? It's your office or it's the Board of Selectmen?
Well, it'll be my office and the Board of Selectmen,
Okay.
but
Both.
I don't get, I have a part of my contract that's dealt with
Yeah.
separately, so. Is that a correct interpretation of the budget? Correct.
Selectmen are getting reimbursed for travel?
I don't know the last time anybody's
No,
ever
I-
submitted a reimbursement for travel.
Okay.
Right. I mean, it depends on how many different conferences we go to. There's a MAPO, which is.
No, I don't mean you guys.
Right, but I mean, they might also come, I know I go to MAPO, and Dory has gone to MAPO, which is procurement meetings, which is once a month. And it just keeps you updated on different procurement stuff. She doesn't always come, but if she chose to go 12 times, then she would get reimbursed for mileage.
No, I mean the selectmen
No, the selectmen themselves are not clear.
themselves. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
I'm not asking about the
They
assistant
could.
town manager, the town
Well,
manager.
but the-
They could.
They could.
If they did that somewhere, they could request reimbursement for mileage.
I don't think that's been I know in the past, some selectmen have gone to, like I mentioned, the MMA conference. We might end up with, $150 registration for several selectmen, but none of them went this current fiscal year. That just changes every year, who decides to go, who doesn't. So, again, as a bottom line, it's effectively a zero increase, both in terms of dollars as well as service. Although we'll give you more service for the money than we will this year, I promise you.
While we're talking mileage, it seems to be in here twice. If I look at the description under 5710, and if I look at the details under 5730. So there's $1,000 for mileage under 5710, and then under 5730 there's $1,365 for mileage and hotels.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're thinking. I would feel more comfortable sending you an email on that.
Yeah, if you could dig in and let us know.
In fact, Dawn had asked if we could hold off on this, because she's
Sure.
processes all these bills, is more familiar with each individual line item than I am, but Chairman had suggested that,
And she's using someone for mileage this week.
yeah, she's actually doing the certification program through the state for procurement this week, so using some of this money, but I will.
So we can bring this one up again
Yeah,
at
I'll-
next meeting.
Yeah, next other specific questions that I can get you answers to that I might not be readily apparent from a formatting standpoint? Obviously, you can send them along as either directly or through the chairman, whatever's easier for you. And
Anybody? I'm trying to get you some questions, Rick.
I'm good with that. I'm good with that.
See, Cindy's still digging in.
Cindy's never been shy.
No, that's why I was asking, we had 1,001 line and 1365.
While you're here, and I'm just
Yes.
opening a can,
Yes.
maybe. Is the format good for everybody this year?
Yeah, it's more
I know there's
detailed
been,
than last year.
in the past years, there's been some concerns on the format. Is this what everybody is expecting? Is this what everybody wants? And it's given us so far the details?
Is this the most detailed format that the system produces? It is, okay. Is it, again, is it too much? If it's not, that's
Oh, there's
fine.
never too much.
It's
Not
okay.
too much.
I think we.
Has this taken into account the halving of gas prices?
No, what it has, it has taken into account the recent increase.
Mileage.
I'm sorry?
Mileage?
No, the
National
inflation
Grid.
Yes, thank you, the electric cost, but it has
Some
not,
odd
there hasn't been an
percent.
adjustment
Police
downward
department gift.
because of the.
Has the federal
Police
mileage
department
rate
gift.
come down yet?
No.
Mileage actually went up.
It went
Yeah,
up?
it's 55 cents. It went, I think,
I thought you were talking about the price
from
of gas.
52 to
Yeah,
55.
but, and it's tied, the federal, the mileage is,
57.5.
I was always submitting at 50, man.
You got it.
Yeah, the mileage reimbursements went up and the gas came down.
federal government.
Eh?
As we get into the more of the departments, they'll each have their own lines for fuel.
Yeah.
So we can ask them, what did you consider there? And who knows, how long this gas is going to stick the way it is.
Yeah, if we could predict gas prices, right, I think we would be here.
You mentioned something about it took, in each department, I know will have, building will have electricity. Was there something that was done a couple of years ago, where there was like a contract or something trying to negotiate electrical rates, or am I thinking of something different?
No.
I thought that was done previous, and where do we stand with that?
What you have in mind is a multi-year contract with Ingrid for, through municipal group purchase, through the Mass Municipal Association. And that affects the energy piece of the bill. So that's why even though Ingrid, announced like a 37% increase, what we've been told through New Energy, Constellation New Energy, which is the provider through the Mass Municipal, is that, about 12% on the energy side is what we should be unfortunately looking at. So it's not the 37, so that part of the benefits of that group purchase through the state. Which obviously comes in much more to play when you see the school budget, obviously. They can just turn off all the street lights.
It's not a public safety issue.
Okay. And I know you're meeting next week regarding the facilities, and that might be a good time too. And if there's, I'll get you some follow-up by email, but any other questions that you have regarding the selectmen's budget too, so we can feel free to raise those when we deal with facilities, because I'll be back, I'll be here anyway. And I know Dory Jamison will also be here. She's got a little more history with it.
Have all of the departments for next week? Is everybody at this point notified of these dates pending snowstorms?
They,
Okay. And then we'll, at some point, work to fit the few departments that we need to fit back in from yesterday. And we'll have another snowstorm to screw it up.
Of course, right. So it is a little bit unfortunate how well we were doing up until about 2 weeks ago.
Right when we started.
Yeah.
It's our fault for
Because
starting.
we're already, in internally trying to think, well, obviously, we plan every year for an over expenditure. We've been spending about a little over $500,000 plus every year. Most of that's in the over expenditure piece. And it's like, well, we're already getting eager to flip-flop that, increase the budget, reduce the over expenditure, and start building up the money. You can't get too excited. You can't get too excited. Excuse me.
You are.
To the back of the room.
You can go to the back of the room. Thank you. Yes, come on up.
No, I want to go up.
It's like a hot seat.
Just wanted to let you guys know that the memos that are in here are reflective of what the department requested.
Sure.
So anything, like last year, you're saying you didn't know what was changed, you knew a number was changed, but you didn't know. The software doesn't allow a mechanism for a memo to change, to say, this was removed or that was removed. So when you're talking to the department heads and you say, well, what part of this number is lower for the town managers, there's nowhere to put that.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
No.
So that is the budget's.
most seamless night you're gonna have, probably.
Let's set the tone. All the nights will go this smooth. We are scheduled to meet next week on the 11th, and we're going to go over planning, town building slash facilities, Board of Health, and library. Wednesday. Liaison reports.
That with library, and the budget number that she put in, if I'm correct, would be just what she needs and not to have to get another waiver.
Okay.
But there's really not much change in hers, and that would Jensky, who would dearly love to have several new offices, but knows that we need startup money for that. Unless we have a tree that we can pick the leaves off of and convert it to cash, it's probably not gonna happen right away.
It's not good weather for those right now anyways.
Cindy, can I follow up on that, if you don't mind? The chief did provide staffing and hire 5 new officers that, once they are trained, which would take a year, he believes would reduce the overall, the net cost when he reduces some overtime would be about $70,000, which is obviously a really nice price for multiple police officers. However, it's the seed money. The seed money to get, because
Get the
you need that,
training.
it's gonna take 2 years to make a return for the time to hire them and get them through the academy, et cetera. So it's a very reasonable plan once we feel we've got some seed money to do that, so.
So a preview of what's coming then.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
That is one of the areas you would kind of concentrate on, though.
In my opinion, that is one of the largest staffing issues that the town has. And I'm not, when I say town, I mean, I'm not commenting on the school department staffing. I mean, the non-school piece of the town, to me, that is probably the largest impact that we should adjust to in addition to revenues or whatever it might be. As you know, the department is somewhat less than it was years ago. It was, having to pay for the full-time detectives. Again, it's not like it's a town central problem, but it's not still from a priority standpoint, it makes more sense.
I think it's a very young department. There's not much longevity in any of these officers that are there. What is it, maybe we have a few in the 20s, but then it's coming down to like maybe 7 years on, 5 years on, 3 years on.
It's a tough business to not have a lot of experience.
Any additional liaison reports? Minutes we will deal with next week. Correspondence, same thing. See everybody on the 11th. I'm looking for a motion. Anybody?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
Rick. Thank you. Said I have it at home, just wasn't able to get home.